Is artificial meat the solution for the future? The production of food for human consumption has been evolving alongside the evolution of humankind itself. Today, the food production industry is facing three main challenges. Number one, the rapid, spectacular, and unprecedented increase in the human population who need to be fed. Number two, the protection of our increasingly threatened environment. And number three, new social expectations concerning issues such as the welfare and life of animals and consequences on human health of too high meat consumption. Artificial meat from cultured cells represents an alternative with great potential because, if done correctly, it could be a way of producing meat in great quantities due to the capacity of stem cells to multiply themselves. This would also mean a reduction in the amount of farm animals, so artificial meat from stem cells would tackle the problems already mentioned, producing enough meat to feed the increasing human population, lowering carbon footprint from livestock, and reducing the need to breed and kill so many animals.
Regarding the historical background of meat, in the past, it is known that pre-human ancestors were eating meat as early as 1.5 million years ago. Human beings' history with meat starts with the first human beings who were scavengers or hunters, having digestive systems that were well equipped to make full use of animal foods. Since then, humanity has consumed meat from different types of animals, becoming even part of our culture. Nowadays, it is estimated that only 1 to 9% of human beings are vegetarians in many developed countries. Thus, most of human beings are omnivores, and as such have a long history of consuming meat. In conclusion, historically, humanity used to, and still nowadays, relies on meat. Regarding the global context of meat, according to our World in Data Organization, more than 320 million tons of meat are produced globally each year. Thus, the average person in the world consumes around 43 kilograms of meat, and the pig meat is the most popular eaten meat globally. Also, it is known that 80 billion animals are slaughtered each year for meat, and that as the world gets richer, meat consumption increases. Regarding contamination, livestock production has large environmental impacts on greenhouse gas emissions, land and water use, being the beef and lamb meat production the ones that have the most impact on the environment. In Mexico, the variety of our gastronomy includes the animal protein in its most representative dishes. It is known that beef production in Mexico in 2019 reached an all-time high of 2 million tons. And in 2020, national beef production is forecast to reach 2.1 million tons. Annual consumption of meat in Mexico amounts to about 65 kilos per person. And according to the Mexican Meat Council, globally, at the end of 2018, Mexico was positioned in 6th place with more than 8.5 million tons of meat, of beef, pork, and chicken consumed per year, thus representing the 3.2% of world meat consumption. Talking about the drivers for meat consumption, nowadays, nutritional needs are considered the main driver. Another important driver is culture, since it is an element for the identity of social groups that differentiates one culture from another. Now, economic development may also be considered as a driver for meat consumption, since during the last 50 years, meat consumption has increased, driven by economic development. However, making meat a more accessible product has led to an inversion of preferences. Now, higher social classes consume less meat, while the less wealthy are the ones that consume it the most. When different countries are compared, meat consumption differs among countries with similar degrees of economic development, suggesting that also historical, geographical, cultural, or religious factors are also implicated in consumer choice. Now, psychology may also have an influence in meat consumption, since when some human needs are satisfied, another will progressively take its place, according to a theory of human motivation. So, nutritional needs are being satisfied, so that it is expected other factors will become more important for deciding whether or not to consume meat, such as the need of the absence of health risks, the need for the welfare of animals, and the need for protection of the environment. Factors that affect meat purchases and consumption. The main factors which currently affect meat purchases and consumption are sensory factors, mainly color, tenderness, and flavor. Also, psychological factors including culture, lifestyle, and moral issues that are related to carbon footprint and animal welfare. Another one is hygiene and safety. And finally, marketing factors such as price, brand, and labels that indicate the origin, safety, local production, and ethical production. Out of this information, we can conclude that the food industry needs to provide modern society with animal products that are safe, affordable, and have a lower environmental footprint, while still meeting consumer and citizen demands for product quality and animal welfare. Right now, there is a communication campaign in favor of artificial meat that places on the necessity to improve human health, animal welfare, and environmental protection. It addresses the expectations of today's society perfectly by proposing a meat which, because it is artificial, has potentially an ideal composition, is technically controlled in order to satisfy physiological needs without putting health at risk, and is better for the protection of the environment since it no longer needs animals to be produced. Even though in reality the product which is produced by stem cell culture is muscle tissue and not meat, part of this campaign is calling the product artificial meat and not artificial muscle, recognizing implicitly that the word meat represents positive values such as a symbol of force and of high nutritional value.
The latest developments in technology which enable artificial meat production. The methodology for meat production is based on the principle of regenerative medicine, which consists of building muscle tissue from stem cells in order to help medical patients. In order to produce artificial meat, cells from the animals that develop muscle cells known as myoblasts are used to eventually produce muscle tissue. This muscle tissue has the appearance of hamburger meat once other commonly used ingredients are added. Therefore, it is possible that large quantities of artificial meat for human consumption can be produced through few animal stem cells. This can bring a host of benefits such as less greenhouse production, the killing of fewer numbers of farm animals, and the ability to continue to meet or even exceed the demand for meat for human consumption. Benefits, there are two major challenges to overcome. Firstly, it is necessary to resemble the consistency of the artificial meat to normal meat, since the second contains different cells and tissues that the first one does not. Secondly, it is necessary to know the change of biochemical reactions that start with a molecule called glycogen, which allows the pH change of the meat and a change in its consistency. At the moment, this process is not essential for the production of artificial meat. Technological limits and current obstacles. With current technologies, there are various principles for in vitro meat production, which are mainly 5, each conditioned by technical aspects. These principles are: Number 1. Work with cells with a great capacity for multiplication. The problem with this ability is that due to the constant multiplication of stem cells, some can become cancer cells. This is unlikely to present risk for the consumer, because when the meat is cooked, these cells die. In addition, the stomach acid digests them. Number 2. Formulation of culture media to ensure a high rate of cell growth. A synthetic medium that does not contain serum or substituted by products derived from microorganisms is currently being sought. Number 3. Utilize a biomaterial that helps cells organize into a tissue configuration. Until now, the most used is a mixture of bone collagen with material, but due to its composition, the production is not sustainable. Number 4. The design of a bioreactor of great capacity to feed cells correctly under optimal conditions that allow their differentiation and therefore the large-scale production of artificial meat. Now, it is ought to innovate with bioreactors such as the three-dimensional bioreactor with cell suspension or in a packed bed, or by cultivating aggregated cells. 5. Produce muscle tissue that looks as much like conventional meat as possible. To eradicate the problem that artificial meat produced is yellow and not red or pink like normal meat because the oxygen levels prevent the growth of red cells known as myoglobin. It is also difficult to produce aromas of lipids, vitamins, carbohydrates, or other proteins and micronutrients that give meat nutritional benefits. In vitro meat production is still in the development stage and production costs are still high. It also has its limitations such as the use of elements derived from animals, the great demand that exists, the risk of cell contamination, and the low similarity to normal meat.
Ethical and social issues related to the artificial meat production. Principal ethical questions. The first set is related to the animal well-being and the right of humans to decide over their lives. This is related to vegetarianism. Many people are vegetarians because the suffering of animals in farms is intolerable for them. They don't believe that in vitro meat will solve the problem. People think that livestock practices have evolved reducing the suffering of the animals, but in fact, artificial meat would address the problem of humans having to kill animals. The second set refers to global warming, pollution, and planet preservation. There is a need to stop the greenhouse emission produced by agriculture. Ruminants produce a lot of methane because of their digestive process, which increases the carbon footprint of beef compared to pork or chicken meat. Ruminants produce over 175 million metric tons in CO2 of the enteric methane. Eliminating or decreasing the consumption of meat will solve the problem. Other people believe that grass-fed ruminants are the solution, arguing that the industrial production of meat may spread antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and this type of cattle has an indirect impact on humans since it is fed from plants, making it organic. Artificial meat is seen as a solution because its production will mean the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and water, making land more available. Despite the possible benefits, some analyses argue that in vitro meat in fact implies more industrial energy. The third set of questions is regarding to healthy eating. Obesity has shown rising levels as well as some other metabolic diseases, and people are concerned about it. These types of diseases are linked with meat consumption. The World Health Organization claims that the processed meat causes cancer and red meats are probably carcinogenic, according to scientific studies. But these studies are limited, which makes the conclusion untrustworthy. Animal-derived food are good sources of proteins with high quality and micronutrients that food coming from plants is deficient in. Artificial meat gives the opportunity to culture meat without the factors that may induce a human disease, converting it to a healthy product. It also has the advantage to be free of microorganisms and parasites, since it is not produced by animals. Nevertheless, genetic stability of cells would potentially induce the proliferation of cancerous cells due to the high rate of proliferation in vitro meat. The last set of questions talk about the fair trade. The food we consume is produced by farmers in different parts of the world, which most of the time are people who do not have an stable income. Only a little fraction of what we pay for our groceries goes back to them, making people believe that big companies like Monsanto are responsible of this unfairness. People think that if artificial meat is produced, it will be controlled by these powerful companies from the West, reinforcing its power, which will lead to a notable and worrying difference between rich and poor countries. How can these questions be answered? These questions are a matter of debate. We have to be informed about short and long-term consequences to be able to decide over the best option. Scientists are not sure that the in vitro meat will have a low carbon footprint or the real environment impact, since it is only based on speculative analysis. But the major concern of people is the perception of the unnaturalness of this artificial meat. 42.5% of consumers are willing to try it, and at least 90% of educated consumers don't see it as a solution.
Artificial meat is only one solution to address the previously mentioned issues, feeding the world with a lower carbon footprint while addressing social needs. And the potential advantage of artificial meat compared to the other potential solutions are a matter of debate. However, at their present stage, many new technologies including artificial meat and also meat from genetically modified organisms cannot be an immediate substitute to conventional meat production for different reasons. They are still non-mature and costly. There are also some doubts that they will be easily accepted by improvement of existing farming systems. Organic farming, which is highly advocated but is not the only option, indeed. One way for the conventional meat industry to change its practice is through agroecology, a concept which is based on several principles including how to stimulate natural processes to reduce inputs, reduce waste, and maximize efficiency. Better animals, more efficient, more adaptable, and more robust. And better animal feed, better nutrients use, and better livestock management with more autonomous farming systems will ensure better incomes for farmers while protecting the environment and producing safe and high quality products. Because we're using more and more limited natural systems, one option will be to move towards pasture systems and ecologically intensive systems, forcing us to better use natural resources, which is also likely to reduce the carbon footprint of animals. In the same way, some consider it is important to develop local agricultural production, including local animal husbandry, associated with short distribution channels in a way that will promote the systems with the lowest carbon footprint according to the economic and cultural constraints of each region. Diverse sources of meat or animal proteins. Another option is to eat more diverse sources of meat or animal proteins from different animal types. Some authors promote non-conventional meat species which are generally characterized by a small size and include reptiles, rats, and any type of bird other than chicken and duck. And of course, insects. For all these species, cultural barriers to acceptance may exist for specific animal species according to the culture and country. However, generally, meat from all these species is characterized by an amino acid profile as well adapted to human nutritional needs as any animal meat currently consumed. Other experts think that we need animal proteins, not in fact meat. The challenge is therefore to identify other sources of protein which are abundant, even unlimited, and inexpensive, and to purify these proteins to make them safe for human consumption. One abundant and cost-free source of proteins is sewage sludge from big cities, which is rich, as everyone knows, in human excrement. The Japanese scientist Mitsuyuki Ikeda has developed a burger made from protein excreted from human feces called in the media the put burger. A third route for the future is to simply eat less meat and eat more proteins of plant origins, like soy, wheat proteins, microproteins, and so on. This development is regularly mentioned in the media with the end point of a totally plant-based diet. Within the European-funded project to like meat, small and medium-sized enterprises have developed meat alloys with excellent texture, juiciness, appearance, and aroma, and having high consumer acceptance. However, some experts show that the consumer acceptance of meat substitutes depend mainly on attitudes and belief towards these products. We need to improve the sensory quality and resemblance to meat of meat substitutes to make them more attractive. Others envisage the consumption of algae protein or protein production from microorganisms, bacteria, or yeast, but these solutions, even if they provide a useful complement, will probably remain marginal. The extreme position in the strategy will be to become vegetarian. A fourth route is simply to reduce food wastage. Indeed, the FAO in 2013 estimates that each year approximately one-third of all food produced for human consumption in the world is lost or wasted, which is a very important missed opportunity to improve global food security and to mitigate environmental impact. Feeding the world in 2015 in a more sustainable way will be possible if meat consumption does not increase too much. if the world rise in calorie intake remains limited, if waste and losses are highly reduced along the whole food chain, and also if non-food uses of agricultural biomass are controlled.
The different routes for the future, scenarios for the future. The first vision is the traditional approach society, which relies on past experience and a closed domestic food market. This vision is negative towards any type of meat substitute, including artificial meat, and also negative towards human remoteness from animal production. The business as usual vision is based on no radical changes in food consumption. The humans first society vision has a negative view of cheap meat substitutes entering the market, especially artificial meat, because they are supposed not to be good for human health. The environmental issues and the animal welfare issue are not relevant, whereas human health factors appear very important. The vision called the Wellness Society is based on a positive view of all factors with positive effects on humans, including good human health. In this vision, there is no negative view of cheap meat substitutes entering the market, once shown they are good for human health, and no problem in human remoteness from food production. Both increasing and decreasing factors affecting meat consumption are important in this vision, with specific concern about animal diseases and animal rights. The last vision is the Vegetarian Society. This vision will support the number and diversity of meat substitutes, but unlike all other groups, they do not support the idea that increased income levels will induce increased meat consumption. All these visions and different scenarios for the future of food consumption are supported by developments in consumer behavior. A first major trend is the rise in food frugality, ready-made meals, and street food, which is developing among the younger generations. Another trend is flexitarianism, which means people who have a vegetarian diet but sometimes eat meat, fish, and other animal products. There are, therefore, fundamental trends which affect the younger generations in particular, some in favor of the acceptance of artificial meat, and consider factors such as urbanization, separation from rural culture, and the desire to protect the environment and animals, and others unfavorable to artificial meat, that in contrast support the return to naturalness and concern about too much artificial meat production from cultured stem cells could be a potential solution for the main challenges that the food industry, as well as the humankind, are facing today: an increasing population with a higher demand for food, the environmental factors behind meat production, including the welfare of livestock and the reduction of greenhouse emissions, and the impact of meat in the health of consumers. However, factors such as lowering costs by conducting studies and trials for new formulations of culture media, development of giant incubators, and safety assessment for human consumption, as well as social acceptance, make it difficult for this alternative to thrive. One thing is certain: the future of food production is changing as more alternatives are rising in response to the current circumstances of the world. But in order for them to succeed, the scientific community needs to be backed by the industry and the governments.